All right, hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. This is going to be a very unique episode recorded at the border between Ethiopia and Djibouti. So on the Ethiopian side is the border post Dawele, and on the Djibouti side it's Gelele. And we have been stuck here for a few days. We're actually on our third day here at the border, and Brian, we've had so many great conversations on the trip so far, and I'm joined right now by Bryon Bass. Some of you may know him from at least two previous podcasts. So, Dr. Bryon Bass, thanks for being on the podcast.
And special thanks to Overland Explorer Vehicles, also known as OEV, for their generous support of this week's podcast. The OEV is one of the most respected camper builders in our industry, using premium four-season construction and the highest quality components to manufacture campers capable of traveling around the world. Even the Overland Journal podcast host Ashley Giordano uses one of their tray model pop-up units on their Tundra for traveling throughout Europe and Northern Africa. From the composite panels, aluminum exoskeleton, and even their own aluminum tray beds, OEV is built to last your next overland journey. Thanks again, OEV.
But more than that, thank you so much for being with me on this journey. You're someone that I have such respect for. Your travel prowess, your skills as a driver, your calm under pressure. You've traveled around the world by four-wheel drive and motorcycle, both as an archaeologist and as an adventurer. And I just love traveling with you. And we're really being tested, I think, as travelers now, sitting here for 3 days. And we're still having fun.
We're reminding ourselves that we need to have fun.
That's right.
I mean, we're definitely in a situation that has never come up in my experience of travel, crossing borders, even between countries that don't necessarily get along. But right now we're certainly in a predicament that will be solved.
That's right,
for sure.
That's right.
But it's we're definitely having to overcome some adversity right now.
We are, and I think the closest that I've had, I spent 2 days at a border crossing between Russia and Mongolia. And that's probably something I should talk about at a podcast at some point in time, but, things got crazy because people got drunk. So there was a bunch of people all stuck at the border, and there was free flowing vodka. No
alcohol here.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. So it actually feels relatively safe. I have not felt, even a moment of discomfort. Other than just the fact that I'd like to leave the border, but I've not felt uncomfortable. Obviously, the one concern that we have is that the longer that we're here, the more people are aware that we're here.
That's true. That's true.
So we are being mindful of that. We've also got in touch with the American Citizen Services at the Djiboutian embassy just to make them aware that they have two Americans stuck at the border post for 3 days. So I guess we'll give a little bit of backstory on what's going on, and we'll also talk a little bit about some of our experience before the border and what we're planning to do after. But we came through Ethiopia, which is just really not happening right now for many overlanders because it's extremely difficult to get into Ethiopia. It requires a letter from a certified tour operator that goes to the Minister of Tourism, who then writes a letter from the Minister of Tourism to the embassy in Nairobi. The embassy in Nairobi is the only place that you can make this happen. You go into the embassy in Nairobi and they check all of your documents. They basically vet you out. You also have to bring in your own letter explaining why you're going to Ethiopia as a tourist. Information on the vehicle, and then once that's complete, then the embassy in Nairobi writes a letter to the Minister of Customs in Addis Ababa, and then the Minister of Customs then creates a package of documentation that goes to the border control post between Kenya and Ethiopia at Moyale. So that was extremely challenging in and of itself. That took me several weeks of work, 5 trips to the Nairobi Ethiopian embassy. And then it probably took us, I would say somewhere around, we spent a night there too.
Yeah, we had to spend the night there too, but it was clearly just procedural, and,
That's right.
and actually even the officials were on board with what was going on.
Yeah, they knew what
just
was
had
the
to
deal.
make sure that one person signed this before that got stamped, and
exactly.
I think their actual process the morning we crossed was about 2 hours and 45
That's
minutes,
right.
let's say.
Yeah, that's right.
Or so.
Yeah, that's right. So what the challenge is that we have here is we got to the Ethiopian side. That had its own difficulties because of an error that they had made on the document. So that required a bunch of phone calls and a bunch of permissions and effort. So it took us about 6 hours to cross the Ethiopian side to come to Djibouti. It was already dark. We arrive on the Djibouti side very quickly. They check our visas. They stamp our visas in. Then they stamp our carnet. They check the vehicle and they tell us that we're free to go. And just as we're driving out, they come running out and they were asking for this obscure carnet jaune, which is something that you don't have as an international traveler. So they held us at the border overnight.
They also mentioned that now supplemental insurance is required for the vehicle.
There was a supplemental insurance requirement. And then we spent the first night, and then we spent the entire next day trying to resolve that. And they told us all we needed to do was provide. They finally agreed that we didn't need the carnet jaune, and then they needed us to just provide this. It's a slightly different insurance policy than what we already have. So it's something specific to COMESA. So we received that insurance policy. They said, all you have to do is give us the insurance policy. We got it. We showed it to them, and they told us we would be free to go, and then we were not free to go. So apparently it had escalated up a couple levels within the customs department. And they basically said, we're going to hold your vehicle until the day that you take it to the port, which is the 13th, so 2 more days from now. The challenge...
And it's important to point out the part of the backstory to get to this point, which is that my cell phone only kicked in this morning. We're now on morning 2.
Yeah.
We just spent the second night. And the service that we have is no data, just voice calls and standard SMS text messaging. And to be clear, the immigration did let us log in to their Wi-Fi, and that was
that made all the difference.
Key is not the right word.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have been able to establish connections outside of the area without that.
Yeah, because in order for us to get those documents, we needed to forward some information, images of documents, in order to receive that COMESA insurance. So fortunately, I mean, the immigration here has been great, to be clear. They stamped us in very quickly. They've been very supportive. They even went and bought us water. We had enough water.
Asked if we were okay on food.
Asked if we needed food. We were okay on water, but I thought it was a good idea, since we didn't know how many more days we might be here, to go ahead and stock up on water. So we're really in a bind in the sense that we cannot go back into Ethiopia because we don't have all of those permissions to go back the other direction. We also don't have an Ethiopian e-visa to go back in the other direction, which takes 4 or 5 days to receive. So we really are stuck here at the mercy of the Djibouti processes. So the fortunate thing is that we were preparing to ship the vehicle to Greece from the port in Djibouti. So we've been working with a company called Marill, M-A-R-I-L-L, and they're a very professional outfit. They actually do a lot of vehicle importation. I think they run all the Toyota dealerships in Djibouti, and they also manage huge logistics shipping, container shipping of goods in and out of Djibouti. So we were already working with them. So I had a contact person I was able to get a hold of Zara, and she has been an absolute angel in providing us with support, because she's actually now able to go this morning with a letter from their company. And Maril is a large logistics company. They've been around actually for 150 years. So they're well respected in Djibouti. And she's at a high enough rank that she's able to write a letter to this customs commissioner to hopefully this morning get us released from the border. If not, it sounds like we have to, or at least I need to be here until the 13th. And then I can drive the vehicle directly to the port, which of course completes the goal of crossing Africa and everything else. It would just be so unfortunate to not to be able to see this beautiful country of Djibouti. I mean, Djibouti has the rare distinction of having the lowest point in all of Africa, 550 feet below sea level, in a crater, and it's called Lake Assal, and we're so excited to see that. And there's this awesome French Legionnaire that has a, kind of like a campsite up in the mountains that overlooks the bay coming in from the sea. And Ali has been extremely supportive. He's an overlander, runs an overland camp. He's also been helpful trying to contact the Minister of Tourism. So the Djiboutian people have been wonderful. The immigration's been wonderful.
Isn't Ali supposed to be bringing us croissants this morning?
That's right.
He said he would do it.
He asked me if we needed anything, and I said, why don't you bring us a couple croissants? So maybe we'll get lucky and he'll show up here in the next couple hours. But yeah, it's Brian and I were talking the last couple days that it's times like this that it's easy to get frustrated.
And we did yesterday, because it was just a series of ups and downs. Hey, the documents are on the way. You guys are going to be hitting the road within about a half hour.
Yep.
Then that got pushed on, and then actually the customs official here, who said all we need to do is demonstrate the insurance, and then we would be on our way. When we did present him with the evidence of that insurance, then mentioned that there were some people up the food chain that still had to approve that supplemental insurance before we could receive our carnet back.
Yeah, and we're already stamped in. I mean, the carnet is already stamped and processed 2 days ago.
Yeah, the carnet stamped. Our passports are stamped.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was a little bit of an up and down.
It was, and I think the lowest point for me was we've been told all day that all you have to do is show this insurance document and you're free to go. And then we showed the insurance document, and
we were not. And then
it got really weird, because they said you are going to leave the car here, you're going to go into Djibouti, and then you're going to come back the day that you need to take it to the port and drive it directly to the port.
Like we're going to put our rucksacks on and just start walking down the highway here.
There's a bunch of challenges. There's not reliable transportation at this border. There are some buses and some just some pickup trucks where you kind of stand in the back. So it's not particularly safe. I'm not suggesting that people don't do it, but I've certainly done more of that than I care to admit. But it requires us to leave the vehicle. We can only carry so much of our personal effects with us, and then we don't speak the language. And we also don't have a data connection. So we can't even use a Translate app. We can't make sure that we're in the right place, to be able to get additional support, like even trying to get accommodation or trying to get in touch with people using WhatsApp, which is a very common form of communication in Djibouti and most of the world. So we'd be restricted to only voice calls and SMS, so real challenge. But
there are some, we do have some plan B and C and D.
We do.
Certainly that we've already talked through. I mean, as the crow flies, we're probably 100 and some short change kilometers from Djibouti City.
That's right.
And so in theory, we could find someone to come on out and pick us up. Yeah, we haven't identified who that person would be.
Yeah, we could pay a driver to come out.
But at the moment, the vehicle would have to stay here in this sort of customs immigration no man's land on the Djibouti side of the border, and that's not a desirable option at the moment.
It's really not. And you know, the goal, I mean, it's been 6 months getting to this point, and we only have 100 kilometers to go to finish the objective.
Right.
So I think that's the part that's challenging. But, you know, we've been talking like last night after we got the bad news, and I mean, I think it was the low point for me. But then, you know, we rallied and we had a good conversation, and we went and got.
We know we have options.
That's right. We have several options. We're also getting support from American Citizen Services, and so and our good friend Jonathan Jensen, the RSO in Kenya, has also been helpful. He's on the podcast a couple episodes ago. So everybody's been really helpful trying to make this all happen. I do have a high level of confidence in the Maril group that they're going to be able to make this happen today, but I think my confidence has been tested a little bit the last couple days.
Yes. So cautiously optimistic, yes, I think, is really, you know, how we have to approach this. I mean, we're certainly safe. You know, as somebody from California, from a Western culture, we're certainly out of our cultural element.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting just seeing what occurs at this customs and immigration processing facility at this outpost, because really this is a border outpost. There are abandoned Toyota Land Cruisers everywhere, which breaks my heart, but nevertheless, we thought we could do a podcast just on that alone.
There's a couple 76s on flat tires over there. There's an LJ78. There's an old Mitsubishi. There's an LJ, looks like a 73. So yeah.
There's the ones the goats are standing on over way last night. They were just standing on top of the roof.
That's another thing we were concerned about. If you leave the car here, the next thing you know, it's a perch for the goats. They start.
It would be.
They'd start climbing up all over the top of the Grenadier.
It's a nice green color. They'll think it's a little outcrop of some grass.
That's right. Well, and I think for us it was helpful to, you know, the people here at the border they're now very familiar with us.
We're now part of the landscape. We're part of the landscape. They propped us up in 2 chairs.
That's right.
The police officials yanked a couple chairs out, and so we're just sitting literally right in front of where all the customs officials are examining everyone's bags.
Yeah. So it was a lot of entertainment.
They're confiscating things. They're letting people through with things. Nothing's really labeled that people have in their bags.
I'm sure they have a rhythm to it, but I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out yet.
Yeah.
And I was able to clear out all of my unread emails for the last 3 months, sitting there.
Kudos.
Sitting there doing that. But you know, we after that initial disappointment, or I guess maybe that's the third or fourth disappointment. But I think it was the biggest disappointment when we were told that we would be free to go, because we have satisfied everything that the border requires. There's nothing that we don't have or haven't provided them that they need to let us go. They are just choosing to hold this vehicle. What they say is that people are going in with a car and then they're not shipping it and all this other stuff. But we have flight records that we can show them. We have our
hotel reservation
for the night before. The
shipping agent.
They're in touch with the shipping agent who's shipping the car, which is obviously what they're going to provide in the letter today of like, we're going to be shipping this vehicle. This is all the process. This is when it's all happening. So hopefully that'll resolve it and we'll know fairly soon. But we did rally a little bit. We reminded ourselves that this is going to be a great story. This is going to be a lot of great memories. We got to see a lot of amazing culture and a lot of cultural dynamics. We've seen at least 3 brawls since we've been here.
Yeah, without a doubt. But conflict seems to resolve it. There's a lot of yelling, and I know that's part of the culture. It's interesting when you see the older women kind of step in and sort things out.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's also interesting, you know, everyone seems to be willing to, when they're asked, to show the customs officials what's in their bags and, you know, provide their explanation. A lot of kids coming in, a lot of lot of Land Cruisers without license plates.
That's
Maybe
right.
they're just shuttling people.
Yeah, that's right.
We're very close to a couple of different borders right now.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're not far from Somaliland. We're actually not far from Somalia either, as the crow flies. So yeah, so we enjoyed watching that. We had some great conversations with one of the police officers who used to work for the UN. He spoke pretty good English, and he really kind of adopted us in a way. Was very kind.
He's the one who stamped our passports right when we showed up.
That's right.
Super efficient and
very, very kind.
He's taken pity upon our circumstances
that's right.
as a couple of first world guys.
That's right. And then after that, we decided it was time to feed ourselves because we had not been doing a great job. We've been having some nuts throughout the day. We had some macadamia nuts, and we had a big protein shake in the morning, which is kind of my go-to. So that was a little bit of home, a little bit of familiarity. And then I went to the truck. I pulled out. I used just the standard butane stoves. So these are the same stoves that you can find anywhere in the world. They use a butane canister. They cost about $25, and I've got a bunch of butane canisters. I broke out the stove. I got a cup of top ramen for me, and I got some pasta penne arrabbiata for Brian in a cup as well.
Kicked it up to the next level with some chopped biltong too.
That's right. We had quite a bit of biltong left, so I broke that all up into the cups, and then we heated up some hot water. Sea to Summit makes this really cool collapsible pot, so it packs really small and thin inside the box, uses some form of silicone, and then of course has an aluminum bottom so that it can heat up the water. So we boiled the water, we made the pasta, we made the top ramen,
in front of the customs house and police station.
That's right.
On their table.
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
We did.
And I think by that time they were mostly, everything was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
The mozzies had gone away, and there was a nice breeze. It was dark already.
That's right.
They were kind of just hanging out and doing their own thing. People got out of their uniforms.
They did.
And they were socializing.
Yeah, and this is also the beginning of Ramadan, so it's a really interesting cultural time. That could be why we're seeing some increased activity at the border as well. People getting to family, making some journeys. So a really interesting part of the Islamic faith. So it's been interesting to see that also unfold for the folks here. But we had a good meal. We got our bellies full.
I was full. It was, the smaller cup, but I think probably because we haven't been eating that much in the last couple days.
And we've not been consuming a lot of calories. We're doing any hiking and walking around too much.
We're certainly laying low.
We're pretty chill.
The police officer offered us some chat.
Yes.
That we wanted to chew on it last night.
Explain what chat is.
Well, it's a plant that's widely chewed. Although I'm sure in some areas they probably use other components of it, stalks and things. Actually, I've seen some people brushing their teeth with the stalks of it.
I saw that. Yeah.
And it's chewed. Well, it's sort of similar to betel nut or even coca leaves in Peru.
Yep.
And it's quite popular in this region. It's grown in the region, and so we see a lot of people bringing that in and it looked like once everyone went off duty last night, the police officers and the customs officials all kind of sat down and were chatting and chewing.
Chewing, yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, and so they offered some to us, maybe as an after dinner aperitif. But we said we would happily, have it this morning.
Yeah,
but they haven't reported.
Yeah, we did try some. We did try some in the old city of Harar. It's kind of like a chewing tobacco. I would say it's similar to that, but they do it in enough volume that it seems like it does get some of those guys a little bit more fired up. But
it's pro level.
Yeah, it's pro level. So we had a full belly, and then we decided it was time to go to sleep.
We did dust the last batch of our amarula.
That's right. Yeah, we decided we were gonna have a little bit of a sleep aid. we probably had enough amarula to pour in coffees, but so we.
That's gone now, by the way. Our supply of amarula.
Our amarula is gone
from South Africa. That's gone.
And I decided I was going to work on my sleep hygiene last night too, so I put in a set of earplugs. We leveled the truck so that my head was no longer pointed downhill. I actually put in, so I put in the earplugs. The truck was level, and I got a little bit more of my clothes off so that I had some more coolness from the breeze. And I actually got a lot better sleep last night, which was good.
Yeah. I mean, I slept well both nights.
I think you got an 85 the first night and an 88 last night on your Oura ring.
Those are ratings on the Oura ring that my mom gave me to try out. Yeah, so it thought I slept really well. I think it liked the length of time that I was racked out.
And in the back of the Grenadier, it's really.
It's quite spacious.
We have to take all of the personal bags and put them in the front seats. I take the Dometic fridge and I stick it up on the rack. We put some water bottles and stuff up on the rack too.
I mean, I can more or less sit up.
Yeah.
The roof, it's higher than it looks from the outside.
It's a big car.
Yeah.
So even you and I sleeping side to side, I mean, it was super comfortable. We're sleeping on these Melville and Moon sleeping pads, and they've got a wax canvas cover, so they kind of have a little bit of a blanket built into them. And then I'm using my Nemo pillow that I have had since, I think, 2008 or 2009. I could be wrong on that, but it was my very first Nemo pillow, and it's the same one that I have taken to all 7 continents. And my goal was to finish this trip with this super cool pillow. And the reason for it is Cam Brenzinger, who is the CEO, the kind of the champion of Nemo equipment. He's been a longtime friend. We've traveled a lot together. And it's nice for me to bring a little piece of the people that I care about in my life with me and support his business. So it's been fun to bring.
Now, my Nemo pillow, on the other hand, had a blowout.
It had a little leak,
which I've also taken it pretty much everywhere. It had a little blowout in Harar, and so I don't have my repair kit with me because this is not that kind of trip where I'm going to carry a lot of those kinds of spares.
Did the duct tape work?
The Gorilla Tape worked for maybe about an hour and a half, and then it found its way. It found its way. That's all right. I'll get that back up and going. But actually, sleeping here, I gotta say, like, a few of the things that came through for me is Patrick Ma and the team at Prometheus Design Works hooked me up with one of their recent shamags that they made.
That dark gray wool.
It's cashmere
wool. Yeah.
So that's been my blankie, and it's big enough. It's cool enough yet warm enough,
and it also blocks some light.
Blocks the mozzies and the light.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping under that thing. If somebody looks in, they'll think that just one person was sleeping in here, which would have been Scott.
That's right.
And then also using their down hoodie that we've also had forever.
That's right. We have had those forever.
That was my pillow.
That's right. It's cool how it can tuck either into a neck pillow or into more of a little square pillow.
Yeah, I use it as the neck pillow, but not around my neck. I just kind of prop my head under it.
Sure.
In that sort of, looks like a croissant.
Yeah,
we're still waiting for Ollie with our croissants. But, so that was pretty key to just helping me get some good sleep, some comfortable sleep. Because I think, especially in situations like this, it's important that you try to sleep or catch up on rest when you can.
And hydrate. And eat food. And then
the police officer also gave us the key to their latrine.
Yes.
Which was super nice.
Because there are no latrines really otherwise. There's a place to urinate with no doors, but there is no hole that I can see in those spots.
No, you would just have to kind of, I don't know where you'd really find
you'd have to walk out into the
hide behind one of these old broken down Land Cruisers, which would be sacrilegious for me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But that really helped out.
So we've seen a lot of kindness at the border. We've also seen a lot of challenges, but we wanted to share this experience because it is a part of travel. And when you find yourself in this same scenario where you've got some delays or some logistical issues or challenges at a border, look out for each other. Make sure you get hydrated, make sure you get your rest, and then try to keep as positive of an attitude as possible, because the officials also see that, and then they become a part of your story, and then they have a vested interest in seeing you succeed. And we've seen that, certainly. My interactions with the Maril group have also been very positive and supportive of each other. So because of that, they've gone over and beyond to be supportive as well. So maintaining that positive outlook, maintaining that respect and kindness for others at a border, and then being kind to yourself. I was probably a little less kind to myself yesterday, just feeling really frustrated about the situation, and but worried.
Exactly, and it's without a doubt we hit a pinnacle of frustration that was certainly bordering on anger, and I think we just reminded ourselves that this too will pass. We're not detained. We could
start walking,
jump in a taxi if a taxi existed, and go on into town and kick it at the beach. So it's the vehicle is currently sort of stuck in the customs process, and so when we just kind of reminded ourselves of what's really going on and the greater picture,
and then we're going to have some amazing memories.
Yep,
we got to do it together. We're going to have a great story to tell, which we look forward to sharing with all of you. And then hopefully the next installment of the podcast after this on the Africa trip will be Bryan and I talking about Djibouti and our wonderful time in the country, getting to go to Lake Assal on the lowest point and spending time on the beach, and then getting the vehicle into the port and shipment on to Europe. So thanks, Bryan, again for being here, buddy.
Happy to be here. I'm glad that I could be of assistance in the process, and experience this all with you.
Yeah.
It's not just our experience, but the experience that we're having with all these different people from different cultures.
That's right.
And along the way, even now, everyone has been really friendly.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes when you dive deep into a bureaucracy that isn't ready for a UK registered vehicle that has never entered Djibouti before. There's a process that's going to happen, and
it was interesting because Ali, the French Legionnaire, says that's not normal. Zara, who works with the Maril group, says she's never seen that happen before. Even within the last 30 days, they had tourists coming through this border to head to the port for shipment. So
we're part of a first.
We are certainly a first to be detained yet not detained at the Djibouti border for going on our third day. So
I'm going to miss them.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss them.
I am going to.
They got a good crew here.
Yeah, they do have a good crew here. So we recorded part of this podcast when we were at the border in Djibouti for 3 days, but now we're going to cover what happened for the rest of the trip and leading us right up to the ocean in the Gulf of Aden. So thanks again for being on the podcast, Bryan.
Yeah, it seems like it was maybe yesterday or a year ago when we recorded inside the Grenadier.
Oh man, yeah, a lot. There is a lot of
like no food.
There is a lot of living. There's a lot of living that happened in that moment, and you and I have talked about this briefly. But there are definitely times that I wish I was back there. That I like those moments in my life. I've come to really take great joy out of the hardships that come during travel. As long as someone's not being injured or there's not genuine chance of death or something like that. But just those challenges, those obstacles, I think I miss them sometimes.
Well, and I think obviously, with our posting on social media and texting and stuff like that, some friends thought that we were still there, sort of stuck at the border. But the interesting part about that experience, before we move on to other stuff in Djibouti, was that, physically we weren't detained. It was the vehicle that was detained.
Yes.
But there wasn't like a bus stop right at the end of the corner where we could just scoot into the local town and hang out and have a cold one. And
that's right.
And the guards and everyone there, the immigration police and the customs guys,
They gave us internet access. They just sit right
They
next
did.
to their table where they're going through everyone's stuff. And I don't know, you couldn't sign up for that kind of first person view of how life is at a remote border outpost between Ethiopia and Djibouti.
And then the goats would come in and start eating all the cardboard or chewing on the bags of cot or whatever they were trying to smuggle into the country.
Yeah,
so.
or some lady had a duffel bag full of flip-flops.
That's right.
That the customs guys, they took it from her. It must have been like 50 pairs of same color, probably the same size of flip-flop.
That's right. And then they just kept throwing all of the unmentionables or the undesirables, the gear into that one room, and then every couple days they would unload it all into the Hilux and
haul
sweep
it
out
away.
the room, and
I mean, some of it, I think it was because it was going off. There were those orange drinks.
Yes.
I can't remember what else, and then somebody would come and clean it, and then they would just start throwing stuff back in there again. You can't sign up for that duty. That's just,
it was so cool. And of course, we talk a lot about what was happening at the border experience on that other conversation.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay, so now that we've just let you all listen to our recording at the Djibouti border, what ended up happening was shortly after that recording, we actually received all of the documentations that we needed, and the customs officials at the border finally showed up. So the team at the Moril Group in Djibouti City, and even the customs officials, had done good work in basically accomplishing everything that needed to be done in order for us to be able to be let go. And we got some clarity over what was happening. Essentially, what occurred was this vehicle was not in their system. They had not been having tourists coming to the border. And the customs official was just concerned that we were going to bring this brand new, 100,000 pound valued car into the country and either just leave it there to use for ourselves without paying duties or sell the vehicle. So that's why they had come up with the conclusion that, all right, you're going to be stuck at the border until the day that the vehicle ships, which interestingly enough, the vehicle has still not shipped out of Djibouti as of today. So who knows how long we would have been at that border. But fortunately, Zara and the Moril Group was able to get the customs official to agree for the Moril Group to take all financial responsibilities and to ensure that the vehicle was properly exported. And then once that happened, they actually tried to get a hold of the customs, the lead customs guy at the border, and he was just not available. He wasn't answering his phone. Nobody knew where he was. He was completely MIA, remember?
Well, and the funny thing was, at some point, I guess it was on day 2, like going into the evening, one of the junior customs officers pointed out that the senior guy was just sitting off to the side, hanging out, drinking a Fanta.
Yeah.
And so actually he was there the whole time. He just probably had his phone I mean, he was, 20 meters from us. He could see us.
Right.
He just had his phone off, and he was drinking a Fanta and kind of hanging out.
And then on day 3, he literally was MIA, and he finally showed. He was supposed to show up at 10 in the morning, and then 12, and then you're starting to see, like, I see where this day is going to go. And then, what time? Because then, Ali showed up, which was awesome, and then we actually decided to take a drive into town.
Yeah, they were like off leash, and
yes.
Actually the immigration police officer was sort of the one that prompted it.
Yeah,
I think he had been chatting with Ali because apparently everyone in Djibouti knows Ali, and including that officer. And he said, "Well, if you guys want, you could just go with him into town, or go move around, do something while we wait." So we actually did. I mean, we had already been stamped in as far as immigration was concerned.
That's right.
It was just
so we
customs
hopped into
for the vehicle.
hopped into Ollie's little truck, and we went to the bank, and we got some Djiboutian cash, and then we found out that there was only one place likely that had fuel, which we came back to that later. And then at some point in the time in that little town, I got a call from Zara that everything was done, and that all that needed to happen was this guy needed to be found. So then you and I are back at the border and sitting and just waiting for this guy to show up.
Just hanging out.
That's right. And it was interesting because he shows up. You saw him. He goes into that back room, and he goes into the room for what, maybe a couple minutes?
Yeah. I think that's because he had all of our documentation, the carnet.
He had it all on lockdown.
The whole packet.
That's right. Yeah. He had it all on lockdown, and he walks out with the carnet. I walk over to him, and he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Like, clearly he was ashamed about the way that we were treated, and to some degree at his hand. So he, wouldn't even make eye contact, handed me the carnet, and all of a sudden, after 3 days, we were free.
It was like, have a good one, guys. They just set us free in the country of Djibouti. Yeah, and to be honest, the immigration officers and the police at that border crossing were it wasn't like they took a side, but they totally understood what was going on, and
they did.
They were very apologetic, and
they were awesome.
Yeah. I mean, so the experience as far as the law enforcement side of that border crossing couldn't have been any better.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and in hindsight, it was exactly what needed to happen. And it's so easy to, in the moment, just wish that things were going to always be frictionless in our travels. But it was that challenge and that friction. And, you and I got to spend a lot of time together. And we also got to we've been in hard situations together before, but that was a really hard situation. It really tested each of us and our patience. And I just kept reminding myself that I was there by my own choice. And this is exactly what I want. I want to have an adventurous life. And that when adventure happens, which means the unknown or the unexpected, that I need to keep myself patient. I need to have joy and be patient until it's resolved.
Yeah. And adversity happens when you travel. And I think in this case, we might have set ourselves up because I believe that you had seen on the web, once you cross the border, it's like 15 minutes. Some Germans in a Unimog did it like 6 months prior. And next thing they knew, they were snorkeling with whale sharks over by the beach.
That's right.
And we just assumed that that's how we were going to blow through the border. And it couldn't have been. It was a polar opposite.
It was. I think it was the longest time I'd ever been stuck at a border. I did have a couple days at the Mongolia-Russia border, but this was definitely the longest.
Yeah, it was an experience for sure.
And the next thing you know, we're out and we're driving the Grenadier in the last country, and then all of a sudden, I just
night,
felt.
By the way, and we talked about that. Right. That we're both comfortable. It's night, but there really weren't that many people on the road, and we needed to just forget. We need to get to Ollie's camp is where we were heading.
Right.
Yeah,
and we needed to get fuel, so we went back into that little village. And Ollie said, there's this other gas station over by this hotel. And sure enough, we got there and we asked if they had any benzene, and they had it in, 20-liter jugs, which is always a little terrifying. But what I did was I always bring along a funnel with a filter in it, and the fuel looked like it was in pretty good shape.
It looked clean. I'm sure because they go through it so quickly there. All the motorcycles tanking up. As a matter of fact, I got some great video of a kid trying to kickstart his bike at that,
That's right.
gas station.
Well, and we were really trying to strike the balance because we knew we had some driving around to do in Djibouti, but we also had to deliver the vehicle with less than a quarter tank of fuel for it to be shipped out from in the container. So we're trying to strike the balance about how much fuel do we actually take on board. So we only took 20 liters on board, and it ended up being just about right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that maybe some of the listeners and watchers would find interesting is that Djibouti it's a pretty small country. It's 23,000 and some small change square kilometers. So let's say it's like, what is that? It's like 8,800 square miles, the whole country. Actually, when
Yeah.
I won't get to it, but we crossed pretty much almost the east-west of it, going to Lake Assal, and we did that in like, I don't know, an hour and 45 minutes, stopping and taking pics and stuff. So it's not that large of a country.
It's really not. So we get fuel, and then what did we do next, Brian? What was the plan from there? It was starting to get dark.
Yeah, that was when we kind of had our discussion, because we got some great sundowner pics at that gas station, and then we thought we would hit Ali's place, this former French Foreign Legionnaire who, at least for part of the year, he lives in Djibouti. He's got a kind of like an overlanders camp there. And as we were to find out over the next couple of days, pretty much everyone who does anything active in Djibouti knows Ali.
Or travel related, for sure.
Anything, yeah. I think, well, when we were there, some woman from the French army showed up, and she was there to do parasailing, I guess, at his little encampment, which obviously has a beautiful view overlooking the coastline and the Gulf of Aden and everything like that. And yeah, I found some guys from UN commitment and some troopers that came out of the hotel that we were staying in later, and they were hanging out and chatting with Ali like he was one of their old buddies from a military unit or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we it started to get dark, and actually it ended up being dark, and I think we got in with some comms with Ali via just the texting with your
That's
phone.
Right.
My phone decided that it didn't like the networks in Djibouti for the entire time we were there. I guess we'll get to that.
All I had was voice and SMS, no data.
Yeah, exactly.
Djibouti does not allow tourists to have a data connection on their foreign phones. I do believe it's possible to get a card, like a SIM card, and then we could have run that on our burner phone, but we were only there for a couple of days, so I chose not to do that.
Yeah. And then so we got in comms with him, just SMS style, and we were asking him because our nav was telling us how to get to his camp, and there were some nuances that really weren't clear when we were passing through the nearby village. And basically, he just said, when you turn right off of the main road, follow the white rocks.
Yes, that's right.
And especially at night, that was a pretty good call on his part to paint all those rocks white. And that was probably, at least for my portion of the entire trip from northern Kenya all the way through to the coast in Djibouti, that was probably the gnarliest road that we were on. I mean,
yeah, it was a low range, lock to center differential kind of road. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be perfect for the guy who has overlanders and Unimogs and other former military vehicles that have been converted into adventure trucks.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Coming down to his place.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that was really great. And then when we got to his place, we couldn't see anything. I mean, it was dark, so the view wasn't really upon our eyes until the next morning. But he had roasted some chicken and some potatoes and green beans and
amazing.
And he had like some sliced baguettes and stuff like that. I think for the first 20 minutes, I don't think I said a word. I was just eating.
I know. We hadn't had much food, and we certainly hadn't had. I mean, they tried to be as hospitable as they could be at the border, but it was just this very stark contrast from even a couple hours before.
Yeah, and I mean, we had been living kind of on protein powders.
Yes.
And there's only so many little cookie snackies and thingies that you can get from the one kiosk that's right next to the Customs and Immigration office, and so it was pretty much like three full days of living on water and protein drinks, really.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, for the listener, it was interesting because when we were at the border, I tried to change some dollars into Djiboutian, and they were all about it as long as it was $100 bill, which, I got a little uncomfortable about, how do I know what currency I'm receiving? I mean, I'm suspecting that they're not giving me something bogus, but the guy was only interested in $100 bill. So I think it's a good idea to make sure that you've got 100 and that all of your U.S. dollars, when you're looking to do those exchanges, are newer dollars. So, for example, 2017 and newer seems to be what the money changers are looking for.
Yeah, we also found out once we were in town in Djibouti City that people, even if you had super fresh $10 bills, that they didn't prefer those. Maybe because they're not seen as often, and even though they were about the most current run of tens, they didn't like those either. Now, this is not like a regional thing. It might just be that locally it's harder for them to do something with the $10 bills.
I think that's the difficulty. But that was interesting at the border, and eventually the guy in the little kiosk just took a $10 bill for 2 Cokes and 2 little like cake cookie things.
Those cake.
So he gave us about $2 worth of food for a $10 bill. So, but it all worked out. I mean, it just all added to the experience. But Ollie was so generous, and the food was so great, and we talked adventure all night. We just hung out and just really enjoyed being with this very well-traveled gentleman. He had a full career in the French Foreign Legion as a paratrooper. He drove around Africa in various overland vehicles, from Nissan Patrols to 105 Land Cruisers to these really unusual French ex-military, like equivalent to a Deuce and a Half here in the United States, big military, French military trucks. So he was an absolute joy to hang out with. And he found a cot for you to sleep on under the stars, and
because I could have gone inside, but I thought, wait a second, at this moment, and at least at that point of the evening, there was not a cloud in the sky.
That's right.
It turned out it got socked in with fog in the morning, but I didn't care. He hooked me up with a cot, and I used those Melville and Moon sleeping rolls that you had, and it got kind of cold later in the night, but it was great. I had to pull out some extra gear to stay warm. Fortunately, I had it with me. But it was a great experience.
And I knew for me it would be the last night that I would be camping out in the Grenadier, most likely in Africa. So I really was glad that we weren't in the hotel. I was really glad that we were camping out at this great person's overlander camp and under the stars, and it was really a neat moment. So
and you could tell I was kind of looking forward to the morning, because all around you could see like NATO fuel cans and some hulks of old overland vehicles. They turned out to be the French ones, kind of off to the side of his veranda, and it was kind of hard to make it all out in the evening. Obviously, once we woke up, that was what greeted us, all this gear, Land Cruisers and the Hilux, and it was just like, wow, this is great.
And it was really all bare land. I mean, he built every last thing on that property with his own hands and with some help from the locals. I mean, he built his house. Even his house was cool. Like, everything was in like, ammo crates and but also like well organized. It definitely showed his disciplines in life, and it was just great. And then morning came and we got to have some breakfast, which was cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I had a baguette with some Nutella on it.
That's right.
Just to kind of go in on it, head head first and have some good brekkie. And then I think I wandered off to, oh no, I took a shower actually. He had
that's right.
pretty cool little gravity fed, jump the water.
4 days? 4 days?
Yeah, we were pretty rank, and that was good. And then I think it was during that time I wandered off to take some photos of some of his military trucks, and then you and Ali went down to a viewpoint down below, maybe 150 meters away, to have a look see. And that's where things got fun.
It did. That's when things got literally a little sideways. So Ollie was just stoked. He was so happy we were there. He loved the Overland Journal, and we gave him a bunch of gear. Like I donated, all the recovery gear. I donated the fuel cans and just all the stuff that I knew that I wouldn't need in Europe. And I gave it to him all because he was so generous with us. And I thought, what a great home for that stuff going forward. So he was all just stoked to have us there and excited. And we were taking photos, and he got up on the bumper of the Grenadier to kind of do like this arms raised photograph. And he's like, I want to do the Toyota jump. And I should have in the moment been like, that's a really bad idea. But he's not a young man, but he's super fit. Like he's trim and fit, super fit. So I really didn't think twice of it. And he aired it out. I mean, being the good paratrooper that he was, that was a huge jump. He did the full Toyota jump off the bumper, and then he was just a little bit off axis when he landed, so his feet were a little bit out in front of him. And as soon as he hit the ground, his feet slid out, and he went to catch himself like a skateboarder would, and that was basically what he ended up with, was a skateboarder's break. It was on his, I believe, his left arm, wasn't it?
It was on his right arm.
Right arm. Okay, yeah. So his right arm. He came down, and yeah.
No, you're correct. Left arm. Sorry, yeah. Left arm.
He came down hard, and immediately he grabbed his arm, and he's like, "Scott, it's broken. My arm's broken," and it was immediately swelling. There was a dislocation at a minimum. And
yeah, it was that from
what I could see. And so immediately I'm like, nope, we got you. So I yelled for you to come down, and then I'm like, let's get you up to the house. So I got him in the truck, and he's stabilizing his arm. And then we get up to where the house is, and you've got so much experience with the sheriff's department, with search and rescue. You're an EMT and a lot of other remote medical experience. So why don't you take the story from there? Now you got a guy with a broken arm.
Right, yeah. and it seems all of my latest trips, the last one was out into the desert in Nevada, where Mario Donovan, owner of AT Overland, had a break on his tip fib brake when he was riding an enduro motorcycle that was pretty crazy, and I was there for that to be the team EMT. And so then I couldn't believe it. Looking at Ollie and looking at his wrist, I'm like, no, this is not happening.
Yeah.
But basically it was pretty obvious that there was either dislocation and or break in there, and he had cap refill in his fingertips. He could grab my finger, and he could feel when I kind of pinched his fingertips. So I knew that once I had it stabilized and kept checking him, that it was not going to be comfortable, but at least everything was in its nearly correct anatomical position, and it was really just getting him to definitive care. And I travel I think all the time, really. I was going to say frequently, but I always have one of my son's old swaddles with me. They're made out of Egyptian cotton. For those of you who don't have kids, you kind of wrap a baby in it, almost like a burrito or something. And kids like that. They feel secure, but they're made out of some really nice material. So I brought one of his old swaddles that has giraffes and elephants on it. I thought it was appropriate for being in Africa, and basically used that as a sling. And we got him in the Grenadier, and he was already on the phone. It turned out that there were quite a few components that we were not aware of. There isn't for civilians, so to speak, in Djibouti. There's not the best primary care there.
And
Apparently,
it came up from pretty much everyone we interacted with.
Yeah, I mean, it is available, but it's almost like you'd have to plan in advance to go visit a doc, more like concierge style, and it's mostly set up for the expats. So Ali was on his phone. Of course, we had to deal with the fact that the Grenadier was set up just for 2 people in the front seats.
And a quick announcement of our new Tires for Overlanding educational series that is going to be brought to the Expedition Portal YouTube channel here in the next week or so. This is a 6-part series that is going to be released over the months of May and June, and it features detailed insights on mud tires, all-terrains, airing down, driving in sand, vehicle preparation, tread lightly, and more. And we're grateful to Hankook Tire for helping to support this new series. So take a look at the Expedition Portal YouTube channel for more details.
Yeah, so it was interesting to hear so many locals talk about the fact that there's just not good medical care. And in fact, one of Ali's first comments was, I probably am going to need to fly to Europe to get help.
Yeah. And we were no, there must be a hospital somewhere. And I think the first thing that we planned to do was get him up to a French military garrison that's not too far from his camp. And so I was lying down in the back of the Grenadier.
Which so we loaded him up in the Grenadier.
We loaded Ollie in the front seat, of course, with you. And then I was like lying down, like I was, going to do some land speed record attempt at the Bonneville Salt Flats or something. And we had to go up his road, which of course was another fun test of the Grenadier. And you had to do a lot of, left foot,
I was trying to be as gentle as I possibly could.
Yeah, exactly.
But where it also didn't take forever because, we didn't know how developed the swelling was going to get. Would he develop compartment syndrome and have some restriction in blood flow? So we also didn't want to take too long to getting him to good care. But even in his discomfort, I mean, he was such a trooper. He was still talking to us and telling us about stuff, and which was good. I think he needed a little distraction, but
completely.
He was like, "This car is really comfortable," and so it was good. Yeah, I think we had the
nice AC.
That's right. Yeah, no, it was pretty amazing because the last leg of getting the Grenadier to the coast, it was serving as an ambulance for an ex-French Foreign Legionnaire. So pretty fitting end to the route.
I mean, we got up to the top of the, we didn't intend to take him all the way to Djibouti City.
That's
but
right.
We got him up kind of on near the garrison. And it turned out a bunch of the soldiers were jogging down the road. So he told us to pull over. And I don't know if it was a CO or whoever had more stripes on a sleeve, but they came over and said, "Oh, the ambulance, the Land Cruiser ambulance isn't over at the garrison. It's in Djibouti City." So we flipped to Yui, and then we're driving him as like an hour and a half, something like that.
Yeah, about an hour.
To get back over to Djibouti City and then to the French military hospital. Obviously, when we got there, everyone knew Ali.
And they knew he was coming because he had let them know.
Yeah. So they came out. One of the troopers came out and picked him up and put him in a car and just took him on in. And then he ended up that day having surgery. There was a doctor that was on staff, an Army doctor on staff, and took care of him right then and there. We actually passed by the sea as well, which was interesting.
Made it right to the ocean. Ocean with the Grenadier serving as an ambulance.
The crossing of the continent.
That's right. We concluded the crossing in ambulance mode, and it's just so fitting. It's such a fitting way to do that, and it was very cool. But so once we got him squared away at the hospital, then you and I were thinking, what are we going to do with these next couple days we have in Djibouti? So what was next for us?
Well, that was when we learned that you could cross almost the whole country in about 2 hours or so.
3 hours, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
we trucked it on east and went to Lake Assal, which it's the lowest point in Africa. It's one of those hypersaline lakes. There are a bunch of them around our planet, and it's I guess it's the third lowest spot on the planet, and it's the second lowest saltwater lake after the Dead Sea. So,
yeah, and I think that I mean, obviously in North America, wouldn't it be Badwater Basin? Wouldn't that be the lowest point in Death Valley?
Well, I think Death Valley, it's 84 meters or so below sea level.
And we were at 150 or so.
We were at 155 meters below sea level.
Right.
And also, just so some of the viewers and listeners will know, like seawater has 3.5 grams per liter of salt, which is usually also sodium and potassium and other stuff in it. The Salton Sea, maybe some people that are from the southwest of the U.S., that has 4.4 grams per liter, and Lake Assal has 348 grams of salt and other minerals per liter. Per liter.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll get to it in a little while, but I had a good time testing one of the Terrain 365 knives in it.
That's right.
Because it's about as corrosive and nasty, including on the vehicles too, as it can get. But
that was really neat. I mean, it was interesting coming from that higher elevation, and I mean, it got very, very hot when we finally made it.
Very fast.
It also, like, we're below sea level, so it's going to make it even hotter than you would be at the sea. Very little wind. It was toasty when we were there.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely in a basin. I mean, like I've been to the Dead Sea a bunch of times, and maybe because of the shape of that huge valley, there's more of a breeze blowing all the time. And I don't know, maybe because of the topography, you don't really realize that you're that far below sea level. But at Lake Assal, it's very apparent.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. I mean, you could see that they do some salt mining there. They looked like there was an operation where they were probably extracting minerals out of the water with these big silos. It was right up at the water's edge. But other than that, there really wasn't anybody there. There was no other vehicles that we saw. There was a couple kids that were trying to sell some bath salt balls or something like
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
But we got a bunch of photos, and if we had more time, if you go a little bit further, there's some volcanic areas that we would have liked to have explored. But Ollie had some concern about us getting through because the water was a little higher than normal because of the rains that they had been receiving for the previous couple weeks. So we didn't even attempt it. But we took a whole day and enjoyed going to what was the lowest point in Africa. I mean, I'd gotten the Grenadier over 11,000 feet when I was on Mount Kenya, and then got it down to about 500 and something feet below sea level on Lake Assal.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite austere.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think that word kind of sums it up.
It really does.
It's, I mean, in antiquity, the salt from there was traded off on the different trading and spice routes and camel routes elsewhere in Africa and over in the Arabian Peninsula. But I certainly wouldn't want to be harvesting that stuff. And we were there really, I think it's one of the cooler times of the year.
That's right. Yeah, because we were there in March, so pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So then we get back into Djibouti City. We decided to get the truck washed, which is a good idea before you ship anyways. And also we had that salt from Lake Assal, on the chassis and other components of the vehicle. So we wanted to get that off. So they did a really good deep cleaning on that.
Yeah.
And then we decided to go a little bit baller, and we stayed in a really nice, probably the nicest hotel in Djibouti City, right there on the Gulf of Aden. So to be sitting at the infinity pool with a couple cocktails, and Yemen was 37 kilometers to
Across
the north
way.
from where we were, north and east from where we were located, which at the time that we were there, this was nearly at the height of all the conflict in that region, and the Houthi rebels had been using drones to attack ships and missiles to attack ships, and here we were, we could see the other shoreline. So
yeah, it was, and it was in stark contrast to our time at the border, crossing over from Ethiopia into Djibouti, just a few days prior.
That's right. So it was, and travel is often about contrasts, and staying in places like that isn't a high priority for me, but it certainly felt appropriate given what we had experienced and the fact that we wanted to get reliable internet connection. We wanted to be able to organize the vehicle in a safe location. And there just really are not very many options. And as a point of, consideration is that the hotel it wasn't like it was $1,000 a night. It was just a couple $100 a night. So you spend more than that on a Best Western in Seattle. So it was still very affordable.
Yeah, it was a nice place. It had great food, and then the valet team outside was totally into us, pretty much taking everything out of the truck and and we were right near the front door. So
we pulled everything
there were some dignitaries and things were showing up for some meetings and things, related to more regional things of more regional importance. And
that's right.
And we had all this overland gear and boots and
we did.
I was washing out the refrigerator, the Dometic fridge, right there in front, and
because we had to get the vehicle ready. So I'm trying to decide, what am I going to haul back? How many carry-ons or how many check bags could we have? There's one Air France flight a week that goes out of there, which was definitely our best option. Otherwise, you're doing some other weird kind of loops to get back home. So yeah, we ended up with 4 check bags between the two of us, and some carry-ons, and then really all I needed to leave in the vehicle was whatever I was going to need for driving across Europe. So there was a lot less left in the vehicle, and we donated a bunch of gear too, which was good.
Yeah, I think we even came up with some other gear for Ali that we hooked the giant loop fuel bladders and some other small bits and pieces.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we went and got some great photos right there on the coast, and captured some videos, and I was certainly feeling an enormous amount of relief to have made it across the continent. And the vehicle, when we drove up to the ocean and actually put the tires within a meter of the water, there wasn't a single warning light on the dash. I had no failures in over 20,000 kilometers across Africa. The only thing that I had to replace was something that I damaged, which was the steering stabilizer. It got a little bit of a rock hit and needed to be swapped out. But there was just no issues at all with the vehicle, which I felt so fortunate to have happened. So, I'm curious, Bryan, like you spent, weeks driving a Grenadier, and you've driven all the cool toys throughout many decades. What was, kind of your unfiltered thoughts on the car? What did you think?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me that. I have a good colleague down in Los Angeles. His wife picked up a Grenadier, but obviously at the moment she hasn't really gone off highway anywhere, and so he had all these questions because they just been using it to go shopping and cruise around town. The first thing I could say was that it's comfortable. Obviously the seats were designed by Recaro. There's no I know this is already out there. There's no electric motors or anything like that. So you got to kind of dial in the seats, figure out, I think I would maybe make 1 or 2 micro adjustments on the back, like when I would switch from when you had been driving. But other than that, once you get it dialed in, it's very comfortable. And, for a guy like me who's over the age of 25, comfort matters in vehicles, and so it's not just the sitting position, but also just the ride itself. It reminded me a lot. We have an LR4, a Discovery 4 for the rest of the world, and it feels a lot like that on the inside. When you close the doors, there's a good solid sound. You're sealed out from the outside as far as the elements, and all of that kind of helps with limiting fatigue especially when you're driving long days, when you're driving over roads that are pretty rough, when you're just alert all the time, especially as the driver because of the conditions, traffic, trucks, animals, people crossing the road,
and we had all
drivers.
Of that.
Yeah, other drivers not paying attention to road rules, things like that. Trucks passing other trucks. All of that can kind of make your driving experience quite tense. And then obviously when the seats comfortable, when the AC works, the steering wheel, I really like that. It's just the ergonomics have been really well thought through, and you can tell that I'm kind of dwelling on that because I think that's what matters up front before you then start talking about the suspension and the solid front axle and all that other kind of stuff, which of course gets you to where you want to go. But
what'd you think of the engine power and stuff?
I think that's one of the other points that I think sticks out, because when you get your foot in it, that ZF transmission, that 8-speed tranny, that thing really, it moves that truck along. And there are plenty of times when you got to pass a truck, pass a string of cars, just get around something, avoid something, and then jump on the highway and just be able to cruise at a speed that's acceptable, so you can get somewhere, especially when you're traveling in places like Africa where you don't want to travel at night. And I'm not talking about breaking the law and speeding. I just mean, getting yourself up to the speed limit and cruising at the speed limit. And I was really impressed with that.
Being able to pass efficiently. And I think it's good to kind of compare it against its peers, which you're going to be comparing it, against Land Cruisers and older Defenders and things like that. And the power is quite a bit more than what you would find in most vehicles. And I found it to be on par with the new 300 series Land Cruiser, and I've driven that in both the diesel and the gas variant. So I think that the vehicle being, powerful and efficient enough for fuel economy, I thought that was a nice benefit of the Grenadier.
And then we also did have that one day when we spent, now this was down in Ethiopia, but we spent, quite a few hours in Mueller's 76 series Land Cruiser, which was like a year old or something like that. And the contrast is very obvious once you jump from the Grenadier into a tried and true platform that is certainly more Spartan, not just in how it's appointed on the inside, but the ride.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Land Cruisers are basically built to not fail. Like your spine will give up before the car will.
Exactly.
And then what did you think about kind of like the room inside, how we had things? What did you think about the build out? What did you think about like how we had the car set up? I know that you had
worked
well or didn't work well.
There's a previous podcast or even on YouTube, a video that you have where you discuss the build out and the platform that you had put in. I want to say by the front runner team down in South Africa, and so we had to sleep in there, not by choice. That was the only place we could sleep really when we were at the border, the Djiboutian Ethiopian border. And one of the things that became apparent to me, I mean, I'm not the smallest guy in the world, but both of us could sleep sort of feet to head comfortably in the back on that platform. And at the same time, for example, when I had to sit up, there was actually plenty of space to sit up. which I was very surprised. And this is not, it doesn't have a pop up top of any kind. This is just the stock configuration on the inside. So I really like that. That was for two people anyway. I like the possibility of sleeping inside the vehicle. I thought the fridge that you had installed there was just the right size for everything you need to keep cold. And it doesn't take up that much space.
It wasn't very big. It's just that little CFX 25. So it's the smallest fridge they make other than a console fridge. And now that I've done that, I think that's the size I'm going to use for all of my international travels, because it's just nice to have a smaller, lighter weight fridge.
Yeah, and if you have things like certain kinds of beverages that you want to keep cold, well, you can rotate those in. They don't need to be in there, packed with, 12 of your favorite, sodas or beers or whatever you want to have in there. You can just rotate stuff in. But it is nice, if you have other items that just definitely need to be cold. I'm a very big proponent of having comfort food when you can, like, even just bar chocolate. Times get tough and you got to overcome adversity, and you split a bar of chocolate and everything's okay at that moment.
It really is.
And
for me, if I have a chocolate bar when things aren't going well, that's usually all I need. So
yeah. It reminds you that everything's all right. And I like the rear door configuration of
the ambulance style doors.
Yeah. I like that. On the left side, it has that sort of quarter door where you can kind of get in and out, and you had set up the fridge over on that side. But also, if you just need to kind of quickly open it up, grab something, it's quite handy. Obviously, the tire is on the other side. There's a ladder on the smaller door as well for climbing on up and getting to the roof rack and anything that you have up there. So I really like that. It looks similar to like a 110. It has that the design on the outside, the body design. It looks like it should be narrower than it is, and I know it's actually much wider than a 110. Right. But unlike a G-Wagon, which just has sort of slab sides going straight up, visually this one has that little bit of a flare, and you don't feel that when you're inside, because actually it's not as narrow as the 110, which was nice for sitting in the back and chatting in the late night or in the morning.
Or whatever, sure. No, it's actually a pretty big car, bigger than a lot of people realize. I mean, it's not like being in a Chevy Tahoe or something like that, but it's big.
No, but
it's a lot bigger than a Patrol, a lot bigger than a Land Cruiser. So
yeah, definitely. But overall, the driving experience in it was really nice. I mean, we obviously went through a lot of different types of terrain, different conditions, everything from literally from a highway with great tarmac to volcanic roads that you just had to creep along with the lockers on engaged and everything in between, and it just performed flawlessly. And it wasn't like I feel like you don't have to have decades of experience to drive that vehicle as it's intended by Ineos, and I thought that's really cool. You don't have to know what you're doing and have been to Baja 20 times over the last decade in order to kind of get around with it, and I think that's really good thinking on their part. Just
works. It just works, and it's got the payload for all the fuel that we needed to have along, and for us and our gear. And I was just impressed that, I mean, this is such an early unit. It's only Grenadier number 372, and they've now made tens of thousands of them. So it's pretty interesting that such an early model was so problem free. I think it gives me a lot of encouragement over the what will be the long-term reliability and durability of the vehicle. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the gear you brought along. So what did you bring along that was like a long-time standby that you think people should know about? And then what were some of the newer things that you brought along to test?
All right. Well, so since we're all friends here, I think some of the things that don't get talked about are the personal hygiene items. And I'm the guy at the different, like the Northwest Overland rally, who talks about going to the bathroom in foreign places and what you got to do. And so one of the things that I bring along, because you never know what happens, are these individual, I think they're just called hemorrhoid wipes. I don't have hemorrhoids currently. But at the same time, they're individually packed. You can use them, for example, they have witch hazel on them, so they have they're antibacterial. You can use them like if you get a scrape or a minor cut or something, or you got to clean your hands and there's no other place to do it for whatever reason. You can use those. They fit in your pocket. They sort of look like almost like a little packet of like a tea bag or something like this, and so you can stash them. And I usually have a bunch of those on me. I found like here I even brought it here. This thing here, you can see it. This one's made by Maxpedition. I think it's actually made for EMT and paramedic gloves.
Sure.
But I carry that like in a cargo pocket or in a back pocket. Because you never know. And case in point was when we were at the Djiboutian border, and I don't know, it was the end of day one maybe, when I went and asked one of the police officers, "Hey, by the way, is there a toilet around here?" And then you got to start to deal, and that just comes up, and it's not talked about that often. And I don't mind talking about some of my little tricks of the trade. I always have those with me on airplanes. There's just things happen where you got to do what you got to do,
and make sure you got plenty of toilet paper, because you don't know how long you're going to be at a place. Make sure you got plenty of wet wipes.
Yeah,
because that just makes life a little bit easier. So you can clean up. Late at night when you're finally getting tucked in, you can kind of just clean up a little bit from the day, and clean your face off and everything else. Clean the undercarriage.
That's important. For not just, because we're from first world countries or something like that, but personal hygiene is important. I mean, if you want, especially if you're going to be in a multi-week trip or a multi-month trip, you have to take care of yourself, and you don't want to all of a sudden be getting sick inadvertently because you just didn't wash your hands or something like this. And, you just have to pay attention to that. And I think it's important. Some of the other tried and true things that I now swear by, one of them is a product. It's called BioSponge. It's basically just diatomaceous earth in these little gel caps.
We took that a few times.
Yeah, it's made by a local company, coincidentally, that's in the area where I live in California, called Platinum Performance. And they use them for horses and, when they colic and things like this, but they have a food grade one that's made for humans. And I take it as preventative sometimes. Let's say you're in that village and you got to eat that food, and you're just going, "Oh my God, this is going to torpedo my stomach." I already know it's so you'll take one or two of those and everything will be fine. Now, it's not obviously you got to look into it for your own applications, but it's quite inert. It's just diatomaceous earth.
Right.
But if you suspect that something's starting to go south, obviously, you can then jump to things like Lomatil and other meds down the line. But this is sort of my first
I definitely got onto some Imodium for a couple days.
Yeah. You never know. But
I try not to take it, but when you've got to drive, when you have to go, when you have to drive, you got it. Sometimes you just got to take that stuff because you don't have access to a bathroom. So
yeah, exactly. And then
now you had these really handsome, like, merino wool long sleeve collared shirts, and who made those?
Oh, those are made by Icebreaker.
And it just looked like you were on day 100 of wearing that thing, and it still looked as sharp as the day that you put it on. I mean, it's a really nice, and it drapes well. It's probably available in a bunch of different colors, but you said it's made by Icebreaker.
Yeah, and it's just a button down sort of Oxford style shirt.
Yeah.
It's made out of obviously merino wool. I think they only have one weight of them, and they've kind of changed them over the years. They used to have some kind of funky buttons on some of the earlier ones, and I don't think there's that many colors you can choose from. I have a black one and a kind of like a brown one or something like this. But you can wear them to dinner. You can wear them in the field. They don't take on the smell and the funk. Like you said, they drape really well no matter. And I was wearing them. We were in some pretty warm conditions.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything underneath them, but I was very comfortable in them. And I kind of bring those along as one of my one-stop shopping kind of shirt. It's sleep in them if you need to. I mean, they're really warm, and
you could wear it into an embassy and not look like you're homeless or anything like that. So
exactly, and then go out to dinner. But then the next day, if you have to climb under the truck and wrench on it, or look for the engine block number, for the customs official, you can roll up the sleeves and you can do it, and
it'll hold up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when we were having to sleep at the border, it was so hot that you really didn't want a blanket on you. But you kind of tossed this. It's a Prometheus Design Works silk. I mean, some would call it a chamois. I would just call it a scarf.
If they're cashmere, it's called the AG cashmere chamois. And
cashmere,
that's
not silk. Then
that's what they call it. And so it measures, because of course I measured it just for giggles, and we'll be writing it up. But it measures like 48 inches, so it's like 1 meter 22 centimeters square. So each side, and so it's basically 4 feet by 4 feet for those people from the U.S. and 1 meter 22 cms and by 1 meter 22 cms in measurement. So you can use it. It's thin enough. It's not this like super thick cashmere where you're going to be sweating yourself to death, but it keeps the mozzies off of you. Now, you can wear it as a scarf or a head wrap or whatever else you need.
Which is how I've always worn it, as a scarf.
Yeah, and I did that
cold.
one night sleeping at Ollie's encampment when the fog kind of rolled in, and I needed something a little bit warmer around my head and neck. Yep. But when we were in the back of the Grenadier, I just threw that thing over me as a blanket. Obviously, it went from, let's say, I kind of tucked the corner under my head, and that was because of the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Because we were definitely in mosquito country, and then I just kind of had it draped over pretty much all of my torso, and it kind of went down, to my like upper thighs, and I was snug as a bug with that thing.
Well, and there was these really bright security lights, so it probably tamped some of that down.
100%.
Like I'd be up at 6:30 in the morning when the light started to kind of from the sun, and you were still sawing. You were totally, which is great. Which is good. And I had one with me as well. And that morning, of course, that ended up being the last morning that we ended up needing to have slept in the vehicle. But I was like, I'm going to use that for the next night if we're still here.
Oh, so, yeah. And
I've used mine around the world, and it still looks brand new, even though I've been wearing that thing off and on for years and years and years. So,
well, I mean, the other thing about that, similar to, let's say, that the button-down shirts that we were just talking about, is the chamois that I got. The color is I can't remember. It's like gray.
It's a heather gray. Yeah.
Heather gray, yeah. And it's
Same
also one of those one-stop shopping kind of products where you could dress up with it, you can dress down with it, you can use it as a wrap when you're going from the shower facility back to your truck. Yep. I used it, as you saw, as a blanket on numerous nights, including some of the nights that we just had mosquito netting over us when we were staying in little inns and stuff along the way. I just used that as my cover up. Keeps the mozzies away, keeps the light out, keeps me warm. But it's not too warm.
And then you had a cool watch with you, and also your Aura ring. Maybe talk about those. Yeah,
well, also on the lines of the Prometheus Design Works, they sent me out one of their Gen 2, their Expedition watch band compass. It's titanium. I did a test and a write up for the Overland Journal for their first Gen 1, and I like them. It's a cool thing to have on your wrist, especially when you're in locations where you just don't have your bearing. And also, when you're south of the equator, I'm a north of the equator guy. That's where I live. And, it's not always obvious, which direction is where, especially when it's overcast. And, or if you have to take a quick look where, maybe you have some directions that says turn north on the highway, and that is your direction, you can quickly kind of take a gander, at the watch band compass, and I think they're waterproof to like 100 meters, a lot more than any sport diver is going to go.
And you had it on a NATO band, but talk a little bit about the watch you had on.
Well, here I even have it here. Figured I know you're a watch geek too, but here's it's an old Seiko diving watch. We even wrote it up. This is the Prometheus Design Works, their Gen 2 titanium compass. But it was a watch that belonged to my father, and I had one of my buddies put in a different dial and put on. He bead blasted it and put on different hands and stuff like that. My dad would have liked that, and so I kind of use that as my generic travel watch. There's a sentimental part to it.
It's unbranded too, which is nice.
I mean, all the stuff that says Seiko or anything else, or 100 meters or 300 meters, all that's gone. There's nothing on the dial, so it's quite generic looking. Even though obviously dive watches do indicate that the wearer might be of some means physically or otherwise, and so it is what it is. But I want to have a watch that you can beat up. It's automatic. And I like taking my dad places, and to be honest with you, if all of a sudden somebody said, "Hey, give me your watch," I would hand it over, and that vibe would just go down the line. There goes my dad's watch somewhere, and he would probably be proud of that too.
Yeah, and I used the Garmin watch the entire trip across Africa, and I really liked how it did a good job of keeping me up to date on my sleep, which is something that I monitor very closely. It doesn't have too many notifications that show up. I like the fact that it does provide the elevation. So, even like at Lake Asal, you could see what elevation that you're at. So there are a lot of things that I really like about those Garmin watches, but even today. So this is my dad's Seiko, which we've talked about before. Nice. So we both got our dad's with us today, which is great.
Yeah,
now you use the Aura ring, which is also something that I've got. So.
I got that one here. Wait here. Here it is. It's titanium or titanium finish. I don't actually know what the whole build is on it. And my mom gave it to me for a present. And I have to say, I wasn't necessarily into it. I wasn't not into it. Of course, I accepted it. But one of the things that I think is cool about it is tracking your different stress levels. It picks up on that stuff. You think it won't, but it does.
It's also it's going to tell you when you're starting to get sick, because it knows when your body temperature starts to go up.
And I can confirm that with myself and Yanina using it. It's when you go back and look at the data, you're like, whoa, there's my body temp going up. And then a day and a half later, that's when I wasn't, feeling so good. But also it helps you track your sleep, which is kind of funny because the two of the best nights of sleep I had.
You crushed it.
When we were detained at the border, sleeping in the back of the Grenadier on a platform with my Prometheus Design Works Shemagh over my head. And I got the crown rating and all this kind of stuff.
I did not. I think I had 4.5, maybe 5 hours the next night, something like that. I didn't do quite as well as you did. So
yeah. No, but it's a handy piece of gear. Obviously, it needs to be recharged. I think mine, I've gone 6 days without putting it on the charger. That part for me is a turn off, but it is what it is. Obviously, it's devices like that. Even our Garmin InReach, you need to charge that up. I don't always like having these cables and things all over the place and finding the right one that fits and stuff like this. But once you get past that, it's a pretty cool little device to have with you. You can also, of course, I lost mine once down at a barn here on the farm, and I got online and clicked on my phone on where's my ring, and literally, you can't make this up. It was in the drawer where I have my metric wrenches, and it must have come off, or maybe I took it off. I don't remember how it got in there, but there it was. kind of crazy.
Pretty. It's a real. Yeah, the Aura Ring is. I think it's great because it also allows you to wear an analog watch. Like if you want to wear your dad's watch, it's a way for you to still track your sleep and have something old school. And I think maybe that's a good pivot to the Garmin InReach. So when we were at the Djiboutian border, my phone switched over normally, where I then had I could make phone calls and I could send and receive SMS. No data because it's just a policy of the Djiboutian government. But your phone never switched over. It never once connected to the Djiboutian network.
Not once in Djibouti. And we have the same system. I think mine's going through
We're both on AT&T, and we both had iPhones, and we were both in the same spot, and it just never switched over. So, a lot of times people that are traveling are like, I've always got my phone with me, or I don't really go that remote. Well, there's times when maybe things don't switch over, and then you never skipped a beat. You were able to communicate back home and with work and everything else like that using your InReach.
Yeah, I have the Mini Garmin InReach, the Mini 2, and I mean, literally, it wasn't a lifesaver, or my life wasn't on the line, but I had it on, and I was able to just start sending texts. Everywhere really, just letting family know everything's fine, but we're going to be a little bit behind the curve as far as our profile, the trip profile. Obviously, in places, especially border zones, anywhere really, it didn't have to be at the Djiboutian border. You should be discreet about pulling out your satellite communication equipment. It's just not appreciated because it's not really clear what you're doing. Are you sending a message to your son's iPad back at home, or are you, trying to give some other information, collect some intel on something? And so, I don't feel like I'm giving away any trade secrets here, but I keep mine, especially when it's going to be on the dash of the car. I put it inside of those little sacks that come when you buy a new pair of sunglasses.
Yep.
And because obviously it has to have a view of the sky, well, the best view it can, in order to get good coverage. And so I found that just having a little black bag with this, thing inside of it floating around, on the dash helps out. I also put it in where the door latch is in the door. That's a good spot for it. And then, for example, when we're, in places where I have my boots outside, maybe to kind of, dry out at the end of the day or just kind of air them out, sometimes I'll drop the InReach down in one of my boots so that obviously it's pointing straight up. But if somebody walks up, they're just a stinky old pair of boots there, and kind of like hanging your underwear up at the end of the day. Most people aren't going to go and fidget with that stuff. So
yeah, and I had the InReach Messenger, which is the newest one that they have, and it just looks like a little power brick that you would use to charge your phone. And actually, it can do that. If you plug in USB-C, you can go into the menu and have it set to actually charge your phone. So it's very discreet. It doesn't even look like a satellite communicator anymore. And I just keep it in my pocket. I keep it with me all the time because you can use it without the phone. If an emergency happens, there's an SOS button right on it.
Exactly.
And you can even in a very clunky way, you can send a message, by scrolling through the various letters. So you can even do customized messages without having presets
too, as well.
You can also do that as well.
Yeah.
So I just keep it on me. I think that it's just a very powerful tool for travel, and it's like we never expect things to go wrong, but sometimes they do. And it's just I think it's just one of the best tools on the market to make sure that you have a way to communicate if you need to.
Yeah, without a doubt. And obviously, we got into the situation where we needed those devices, definitely for me. And then also when you're just traveling along, and even if you do have normal cell coverage, you're going to fall out of coverage in more remote places, like in parts of northern Kenya. And when we got into Ethiopia, there were areas where there was no cell coverage. It just was
no coverage at all. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, really powerful tool. And I think, looking back on it, everything that we brought with us worked great. We didn't have any failures on anything that I can think of. And, overall, Bryan, it was just such a joy to travel with you. I'm always grateful for the time that you and I get to spend together, and we've been into some of the coolest places on our trips together. So for me, it was just such an honor to have you there for that final leg, and you were an incredible addition to the journey. And during one of the most challenging parts of it, I had someone there that I trusted completely to have my back. So thanks so much for being along, Bryan.
Being the pessimistic optimist that I am about how soon we're going to get out of this circumstance.
I think I would describe you as a rational optimist. I don't think you're very pessimistic, but you're pretty rational. I tend to stay on the very extreme end of optimist. I don't really tend to even go far into rational, but sometimes I do.
Yeah. And I think some of my world experience, I just know that, in certain places at certain times of the year, it's like being around the Mediterranean countries that still practice like siesta or fiaca or something like that. Hey, let's go do something, and it's noon. You know that from noon until 5, a lot of shops aren't going to be open. It just is what it is.
It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
No matter how much you will, like, some local bank in a small village to be open, it won't be.
That's right. Well, and it was just an incredible end as well. And, everything, the fact that the vehicle arrived without any failures, it didn't even have a door ding on it from a shopping cart. I mean, the car is in as good a condition as when Ineos handed me the keys. And I feel grateful that the vehicle performed so well and that we didn't have any accidents or major issues along the way. And also just a huge thanks to Zara from the Morrill Group, because she really stepped up to our aid at the Djiboutian border problem. And JJ from the State Department in Kenya, he was actively keeping an eye on us and communicating with us to make sure that we were safe, and that, and he was updating his partners and cohorts in Djibouti of our current situation. So I just think there's just so much to be grateful for. Ali was just an absolute gem, and anybody who goes to Djibouti, make sure you look him up. The Ali French Legion camp that he's got there. It's very worth the stop.
If you do an internet search, it pops up, and if you can't find it that way, I think you just have to ask somebody at a gas station, or at a fuel station attendant's going to know exactly how to get
and it's on iOverlander as well, so it's easy to find it. So, well, Bryan, thanks, man, so much for being on the trip, and thanks for being on the podcast today to kind of do our little recap. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience?
Well, I would say that just in closing, we obviously, there was a lot of homework that had to happen for this trip. You did a lot of it. But it's important, before you go to places, that you cover not just your logistics, but things to do, things to see. We had kind of our A list and then a B list of things along the way, not just in Djibouti, but in Ethiopia and lesser extent for me anyway, in northern Kenya. But it's important to have things to check out and also just contingencies for your own travel. Your trip's going to take on different flavors along the way, and so you might not be able to hit everything, and just be flexible and do the homework ahead of time. Obviously we did a lot of homework on just online resources. State Department, I always check for the British Foreign Office. They have stuff. You can get on and find like recent travelers and their experiences in these countries, and I think that's important to kind of go through and just make sure that your trip is going to be as safe as possible. Talk to your local medical professionals about not just vaccinations or other things you might need, because it doesn't matter, really, that you might want to eat at some Whole Foods and have just a really great organic diet. But when you go to some places on the planet, you're going to become vector number one for things they have there. And so you just have it is what it is. And it's important to find out, things that you can do ahead of time to make a trip so you're as healthy as you can be on your trip. And then if you have issues on the trip, and we talked about that a little bit, during this podcast, make sure you take along meds. And we should cover that maybe at a different time, but just kind of gear that we had with us, which we didn't really dive into at all because we had a lot of other medical stuff in case things went from good to bad to worse to operating theater. We had that level of stuff with us in hermetically sealed kits that in case we had to provide, all the basics.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's important. Obviously, taking a week-long trip to Italy, go to Rome, I wouldn't be carrying a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, where we were, it was kind of important. And I think that's really it. Just get out there and have fun. And our trip was great. Scott's kind of playing it down, but there was an interesting point at the end there where he became the first guy to cross 7 continents by a vehicle. I think I'm
grateful for all of it, Bryan, and I'm just so grateful for your friendship and for you being such an incredible part of the Overland Journal team as well. And I look forward to whatever you and I are going to get up to next. We'll find some other place to get in trouble.
I'm already scheming it.
I know. I saw the email. So we'll make sure we share. We'll make sure we share that soon. So, well, thank you again, Bryan, for being on the podcast, and we thank you all for listening. And we'll talk to you next time.